Welcome back to Small Caps, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kerry Stevenson, and today I'm talking with the Executive Chairman of Aston Minerals. ASX code is ASO, in case you've been hiding under a rock and haven't heard of Aston Minerals. Because what they're doing is they've got gold and nickel over in Canada. The Executive Chairman, Tolga Kumova, is with me today. Tolga, great to see you. You're going over to Canada, and that's why I wanted to grab you now, because you're going to site, I think it's next week, isn't it?
Yeah, so early next week, I'm off to actually see this thing with my own eyes, Kerry. It's one thing to just get reports and see the videos and the photos and lots of stuff, but I'm used to actually going and kicking the rocks and seeing it in real life. So yeah, next week I'm off. I'm taking a couple of analysts with me. It's going to be very, very interesting, very exciting.
It is going to be interesting, exciting. But Tolga, a lot of people will know you have been successful in the past. You're extraordinarily pumped up about Aston Minerals, and I want to get to the bottom of that. So people can go back and listen. I spoke to you a month ago. So ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know who Aston Minerals are, go and check out the interview I did with Tolga about a month ago, which is who they are, what they've got. But it's a big nickel deposit over in Canada. What is getting you excited about it, Tolga? So
we've drilled a couple of holes in this thing. It's the actual structure is almost 7 kilometers long.
Oh, wow.
So what we call boomerang target. Yep. It's a large magnetic intrusive which maps the mineralisation to a T. What our job is to try and find the higher grade components of it. We drilled a couple of holes to the north, about 3.5 kilometres away from our target that we're drilling right now called Bardwell. The whole 3.5 Ks away hit 700 metres or thereabouts of about 0.23 nickel, almost from surface.
Okay, let me stop you there very quickly. For those that don't know, when you say 0.23 nickel, give me a comparison to others. Is that very high grade? So
to give you a comparative, it's Mount Keith, which is BHP's largest nickel asset, is 230 million tonnes at about 0.52 nickel. And 50% of that is actually in silicates, so non-sulfide minerals. So they don't process or produce 50% of that ore. So if you look at that drops the grade of Mount Keith down to about 0.26 of recoverable nickel in sulfides. We did the work recently to understand how much of our actual nickel's in sulfides. And we know that approximately 93% on average across the deposit so far and the holes we've drilled so far is in sulfide minerals. And that
means it's recoverable. That means you can get the nickel out and it's not difficult. It's not in the silica. Is that correct?
Yeah. So we're going to go through a process and do the metallurgy, but at this point, this is what it's telling us. So that's exciting in itself. Don't get me wrong, 700 meters at 0.23 nickel, but it's not what's going to excite me at this point, considering down at Bardwell, we hit 163 meters at 0.52 nickel plus 0.01415 cobalt, which we did the analysis on that as well. And that came in, I think that 163 meters, about 96% came out in solution, so in sulfide and recoverable minerals. So that's incredibly exciting for us to put it into context.
Is that unusual, Tolga, to get that much recoverable?
Just depends on the geology. And we're lucky that it's in, from what we've seen so far, and I won't go into too much detail, but the minerals that we're seeing, that the geologists are seeing, are the sulfide-hosted nickel minerals. So it is special. It is unique in that sense that it is very high sulfide content, which is exciting for us. But add that to the broad widths that we're getting. So 163 meters and ending in mineralization, where the last 18 meters were 0.66 nickel, which is, you can see the grade is kicking up towards the end of the hole. And that in itself is a great hit. You won't find anything else like that. If I've gone back and gone through all the junior mining companies over the last 20 years, I don't think any project or any junior has hit 163 meters of 0.5 nickel anywhere in the world. So
wow,
it is unique in that sense.
Okay.
So these big assets, they're not owned by juniors. Like when you do a comparative, the assets that look like this, Rocky's Reward, Yakabindi, Mount Keith, these are all owned by BHP.
Yeah.
So investors don't get to see them, but they're large producing assets for BHP. So Nickel West, their BHP nickel division, is 1 billion tonnes at around 0.6 nickel.
Okay.
The only other comparative you could probably find on the ASX would be Chalice. Chalice's resource, they got a high-grade component.
Sorry, Tolga, they're a nickel PGE, aren't they? They're not a pure nickel play.
No, well, they're not a pure nickel play. They're overall, the large resource is 330 million tonnes at 0.58 nickel equivalent. So what they do is they take their PGEs and the copper and everything else that's in the ore and consider it nickel equivalent. So, and that's to make it easier for people to understand. But 330 million tonnes at 0.58 nickel equivalent is pretty good. Well, their market cap's like, I don't know, $2 or $3 billion. So,
well, actually, and Tolga, just you mentioned Chalice. They were actually at the gold conference in 2019, and their share price, I think, then was about 22 cents, and that was the last time we all got together. But
what are they now, Kerry?
What I want to know is what has got people so excited about Chalice, and is there a comparison with Aston?
Well, it's early days for us, and I will say it's early days. So we've drilled a hole that I don't think you can find anywhere else in any junior, and I'll be gladly corrected. So 163 meters, ending in mineralisation of 0.52 nickel, and it's this. Aston isn't a PGM play. It's actually a pure nickel and cobalt play. So keep that in mind. That is one differential. The scale so far. So this is why yesterday's announcement was incredibly important and is exciting. We hit, I think, 277 meters of nickel sulfide mineralisation, and the mineralisation has got some semi-massive, it's got blebby, coarse, and finely disseminated mineralisation throughout it. It's 150 meters away from the first hole,
right?
That we drilled. So from hole 76 is 150 meters southwest. So we're extending the strike and we're seeing the similar mineralisation. That hole ended at 525 meters or thereabouts, and it's was still in mineralisation. What we've done now is stepped out 150 meters from there, and with rig 2 and with rig 3, we're just doing the pads and permits and stuff. Sorry, the pads. I've already got the permits. The pads to drill 100 meters northeast of hole 76. So we're effectively defining almost 600-700 meters of strike.
Okay, and what's your time frame on that, Tolga?
We're drilling the holes now, so we'll know. We'll be able to see hole 81, which is the 150 meter step out to the southwest, probably by the end of this week, which is why I'm timing my trip to Canada for early next week, because I want to see all that core. And yeah, so if we do that, you can do a pretty simple back of the envelope calculation. I mean, at the moment, we've got about 300 meters of strike so far on either side of hole 76 and 81 or thereabouts. There's 400 meters of depth and it's at least 350 meters wide. We haven't been able to drill across the mineralization just yet.
So Tolga, sorry to interrupt you again, but how did you, and I know we spoke about this before, but just remind me, how did you guys get your hands on it? Because if it's such a big nickel plate and it's got potentially so much value in the ground, why didn't anybody else step across it and go, all right?
That's a great question, Gary. I mean, I ask myself this all the time, and some of my shareholders, some of my larger shareholders asking, it's like, how did it end up in your hands?
Yeah.
And I'll be really honest, we went there looking for gold, and it was through Dale Ginn. We were drilling for gold, and we're drilling some holes, and instead of seeing gold, we're seeing all these sulfides, and we're like doing XRF, and the gold, well, it's coming up with nickel grades. Then we're approached by a nickel company as well to potentially do a joint venture and look at it, and we're like, we're seeing nickel in our holes. People are asking questions about it. Let's go away and do some work. The reason why this isn't mined, the reason why it's still sitting there is because you can't see it from surface. There's like 10, 15, 20 meters of cover, glacial till. So there's no surface expression.
Okay.
It was drilled in 1959, 1960. And the reason why they walked away from it. And in 1960, if you're seeing these types of grades, you probably weren't interested. And I'll tell you what pricked our interest the most. There was a historical drill hole where I think there were 2 holes we discovered. And they were like 1959, 1960, these drill holes, where they drilled a couple hundred meters at 0.3 nickel.
Okay.
And it was going across the structure. And then there was another hole which was angled a little bit more deep at the actual mag high inversion. And the last 30 or 40 meters, it goes from 0.3, 0.34, 0.38, 0.42, 0.4, 0.49, 0.46, 0.6, 0.62, 0.68, and then the hole ends. And we've like found this hole. We're like, we need to figure out where this is. We need to put a hole and see what this thing does at depth. So I'm going to call it luck. I mean, a lot of very, very smart people in the world, and we've, my history, and people know our history.
I do, yeah. A lot of people know your history.
Dale's been doing this for 35 years, been drilling holes all over the world. I've been drilling, I don't even know how many rigs I'm funding at the moment in different companies. And yeah, you can drill a lot of holes and not get lucky, but we drilled a couple of holes and it's turning into something significant. So it's all
right. Again, I want to talk investment side of things now. I want to talk about why investors should be looking at you guys right now. So first up, how are you going to fund this? How much cash have you got in the bank at the moment? And I want to talk what sort of, I know this is early days, but I want to know where it is. It's Canada, which is a good jurisdiction, but is it in the middle of nowhere? You're going to have to do a lot of stuff. So first up, let's talk how much money you got in the bank.
So we had about $3.8 million at the end of last quarter, thereabouts. Okay. So at some point we're going to need money, and we're a junior exploration company. Yep. We always are going to look for money for funding options. So at some point we'll be doing something along those lines, but it'll be just shareholders that are already shareholders that will get the preference. And I know my shareholder base, and we don't need a lot of money to actually drill this out. And I'll go into a bit of detail about the geology. So we need enough funds to prove 1,000 meters of strike. Right now we're at 300, and I'll go back to what that actually means. If you do 300 meters by potentially 400 meters deep and at least 350 meters wide, the peridotite host rock is somewhere between 3 and 3.4 specific gravity, so the weight of each ton. If you do a back of the envelope, you come up with a big number already, and that's on 300 meters. We're doing 150 meter step out already to the south. We're going to do 100 meter step out to the north. All of a sudden, you're looking at a lot of tons if those holes all come in. It's already exciting as it is. If those both come in, then and Mother Nature's kind to us and the grade hangs together, and at this point, it looks like it does. We said in our announcement yesterday that the hole we're drilling, it looks similar to hole 76, except the pentlandite that we've got there is a lot more coarse. And there's a lot more of it, but it's coarser. So if all those things come together, we're sitting on a very, very large resource. And keep in mind, it's not Tanzania, and it's not in some part of the world where, it's not even like BHP and Rio were fighting over Naront, which is about 500 kilometers north of us. There's no roads there. There's no power lines. There's no infrastructure. And they're fighting over a nickel deposit up there, which Twiggy ended up winning the fight. But this is 150 k's north of Sudbury, where they produce 50% of the world's nickel for 100 years.
Oh, wow. So okay.
There's 3 refineries within 150 kilometers of us. There's power line and road, all hydro, within 10 kilometers of deposit. It's not like even Australia, BHP and the Australian miners over in WA are typically paying somewhere between 25 and 30 cents a kilowatt hour.
Yep.
Over here, it's hydro. So it's somewhere between, let's say, 5 and on the worst case, 10 cents a kilowatt hour.
Wow. And do you know what, Tolga, that's very important to bring up. And I'll tell you why. Energy costs are rising. And I believe that some deposits going forward will become quite difficult because of the energy costs that surround it.
Yeah.
So if you're telling us that this area, not only have you got, as you said, some refineries close to you, it's 10 kilometres from power and it's hydro and it's low cost.
Yeah, no, it appeals. And where we are in the world, like there's mega deposits all around us, like right 30 kilometres southwest of where we are. IAMGOLD and Sumitomo have a deposit called Cote Lake, which they're developing right now. It's 18 million ounces of 0.8 grams, which is almost in operation. South of us, like I said, you've got Sudbury. Timmins, which is north of us by about 40 Ks, is 70 million ounces, has been operated, developed there. There's Kidd Creek, who is the world's largest VMS deposit owned by Glencore. It's only 50 Ks north of us. So it's not like these elephant deposits don't exist. That where we are, that's what is typical. It's
all right. So give me in a nutshell, what I want to know is this: at some point, you're going to need to raise funds. You're in a good area. What I want to know for those people out there that may be sitting on the fence, that may be looking at this going, well, I don't know, Tolga. I don't know. Not quite sure. What's next over the next 3 months? I mean, I'm sure we're going to speak before 3 months is up, but just give us a picture of how you're going to develop this and develop value for shareholders in the next quarter.
So, I mean, the comparison to make would be to Chalice. Like Chalice, we were talking earlier, is 20 cent stock, and they've, it's what, $8.50. I'm not saying we're going to do the same thing, but they've developed their overall large resource is 330 million tons of 0.58 nickel equivalent.
Okay.
If you do the back of the envelope on what we've already drilled, we're getting a big number already. If we're lucky, and I say lucky, Mother Nature, and it hangs together and the grade stays where it is or better, then over that 1 kilometre strike that the team has defined and is reasonably confident on, you're going to see a very large deposit. And I mean, 0.5 nickel is people consider it low grade, but when you're looking at what BHP actually mines, it's typically that grade over these large bulk tons. So there's your value upside. You look at the size of this deposit potentially, look at the grade that it is already, and what we've already defined. 2 more holes, and you're looking at something. It's going to be.
Hey, when's the next lot of news, Tolga, is what I want to know, because I'm not quite sure that the market
so what we do
realizes whether you've got a tiger by the tail or whether it's
definitely got a tiger by the tail. You don't hit 163 meters at 0.52, ending in last 18 meters at 0.66 and not have the tiger by the tail. Okay. And then we stepped out 150 meters away and hit what we think is going to be similar, if not better, and ending in mineralisation again. So that's your tiger with 2 hands. Yeah. The third hand, where you're almost putting a noose around the tiger's neck, is hole 3, which is another 150 meters to the south. And that point, just that 500 meters of strike just there is, you're looking at something of national significance to North America from a nickel deposit, and not PGEs, specifically nickel, which is what all these battery producers need. And in a climate and environment where the energy costs are so low, there's refineries all around us. It's first world jurisdiction. So tiger by the tail, we've already got 2 hands. It's just a matter of someone going to put a leash around its neck in some, and we'll know the next hole.
If anyone can put a leash around its neck, it's you, Tolga.
It's not me. It's the team in Canada.
Actually, can we just briefly, because we're running out of time, but can we briefly talk about your managing director, Dale Ginn? Because wasn't he pretty excited about this actually before you even started drilling? Is that right?
Yeah. So Dale's got a lot of experience when it comes to exploration in Canada. And when he first pointed this out and looked at the scale, like we just had the mag inversion, the historical hits, and I was looking at it then going, Tolga, I'm not going to jump out of my skin just yet, but I'm telling you, we're on something ridiculous in terms of scale. Just didn't know the grade, and now the grade is coming together at a typically a grade that's mined by the majors. Every time I speak to him, he goes, this is going to be massive. This is huge. People will figure it out. It'll just take a bit of time.
Right.
But we just need 3 or 4 holes. And he goes, once they can map it out, and he goes, we can already do that with what we've seen so far. 1 or 2 more holes in this thing, going across the strength. And to be perfectly honest, he keeps saying, he goes, I don't know what it's going to take to actually get through to the other side of the structure. Like, we're saying it's at least 350 meters wide. Now, you can't find a nickel deposit in a junior that's 350 meters wide and 400 meters deep, like, of this grade.
Yeah,
it doesn't exist. So yeah, it's something that's unique, and somehow it's fallen in our lap. And I mean, I've spent a lot of money drilling holes that didn't come up with anything. And in this case, we're lucky because when we drill a hole, we can see it.
Exactly. All right. I always finish my interviews like this, Tolga. I don't know if you remember this from last time, but I want 3 reasons, only 3. You're probably going to turn around to me and say, I've got 25, but I only want 3 reasons why my audience that's listening today or tomorrow should be sitting up and taking notice of Aston Minerals right now.
The world needs nickel. It needs nickel deposits for the electric vehicle evolution to occur. So I was reading some statistics. 60% of the weight of a battery is nickel.
Yeah.
And so for that to exist, for those lithium mines and all that sort of stuff, that world to become commonplace, we do need nickel. That's firstly. Secondly, to find something of this scale that is going to be of relevance to majors, and it's not like a 5 or 10 year mine life, but then I'm talking mine life, but we haven't got a resource yet, so I'll qualify that. We need Mother Nature to hang together.
Yeah.
But something of scale is going to be relevant to all the customers, especially North Americans, but also the other miners that want a foothold in this space.
Yeah.
And the third is going on from grade. It's just jurisdiction. We're not in some country where you've got to worry about political issues or, I don't know, uprising, civil wars or infrastructure or anything like that. This is a first world jurisdiction.
Yep.
It's Canada. It's low cost power. The other key thing to keep in mind, this one of the things that I think about all the time in terms of developing an asset, and I've developed assets. It's not easy finding the right people, but in Sudbury, which is 150 k's south of us, they've been mining nickel for 100 years. They know it better than anyone. So the skill set, the teams that we can put together to actually put this thing potentially, I said we don't have a resource yet,
no.
Potentially, is quite unique. Probably the 4th thing I want to say.
See, I told you to try and get away with a 4.
I'll do the 4th. The type of geology it is and what we're seeing in the hole so far shows that it's incredibly uniform. So in terms of the structure of the deposit and the mineralisation. So we don't need to go and drill, from what we've seen so far, don't need to go and drill 25 meter spacing on this to define a resource. It's not a gold resource where there's variability to that extent. It's a big structure. So keeping that in mind, the funds that we need to define a resource of that scale is not a lot. So we think, and this is very early days, and talking about geology, and I will qualify, there are risks involved, and it's Mother Nature. Absolutely do, yep. But the risks, the amount of drilling required to potentially get this to a point where it's of that scale to interest the majors is not a lot, which means it's not going to cost us a lot of money to do. All right, Tolga. Keep that in mind. Well, it's exciting days. You get over there to Canada, come back, let us know what you see. It's really good. I love it, the fact that you actually go to site, have a look, smell the core, if you like. Enjoy over there. Well done. It's a big resource, ladies and gentlemen. As you said, the world needs nickel. This is scale. This has got grade. It's in a good jurisdiction. But as always, ladies and gentlemen, do your own research. I'm Kerry Stevenson for Small Caps, Tolga Kumova, Executive Chairman, Aston Minerals. Thanks so much for joining me today. Thank you, Kerry. Thanks, everyone.